When we read about when Jesus was talking about the end times, what it would be like, he gave 2 times that the world situation would be. And one of them was as it was in the days of Noah, and one of it was as it was in the days of Sodom. Remember that? See, that's where it would be at his coming. Unless there were specific things going on in them 2 times, that wouldn't mean a whole lot to us. If he could have just said, hey, it'll be a bad time. But he gave those 2 specific times because there was some things going on in that time, folks, that was unique to that time. And, it wasn't happening every day. It just happened, at that time, everything began to multiply. He said it would be like that at the end. But I want us to notice, too, when we he first talked about the days of Noah. He said they were eating and drinking, giving in marriage, and didn't know till the flood came, which shows us that nobody was paying attention to anything, even though Noah was preaching for 100 years. But they just kept going on there like they always had. And I saw a thing today, and it's talking about America. America had said, our kids has been on the phones and the video games so long, and that's all they know. They're also too occupied to think about anything else, and I'm prone to agree with that. That's where their life is at, is on that video game. But the same way but one thing we have to notice that too, in the days of Noah and in the days of Sodom and Gomorrah, the flood did not happen till Noah was on the boat. Remember that? God had a escape route for his people, even in those 2 times, as bad as they was. The days of Sodom, he sent angels down there to get Lot out. And even with the angels there trying to get Lot out, Lot's son-in-laws and his other daughters didn't make it. They didn't follow. But he made a way of escape for those that was trusting in him in those 2 times. But how was it in the days of Noah? We've looked at this before. How was it in the days of Sodom and Gomorrah? And I've mentioned a few times. We want to look at it again tonight for just a little bit. Like I said, the first thing we have to remember is Jesus said that they was eating and drinking and marrying and giving in marriage, which he was just saying that they wasn't paying any attention to things around them. They wasn't paying attention to what they was hearing until the flood came and took them all away. But just as sure as you live and breathe, folks, there is a God that rewards righteousness. He is also a God that sends judgment upon wicked, and he's merciful. Yes. 100 years, we know Noah preached 100 years. So he didn't just wake up one morning and everything wicked. That had been going on a while, but building until one day the flood came. Let's look over at Genesis 6 and let's look at just see what the Bible says here.
What did you say, Jerry?
Genesis 6. Everybody got Genesis 6? And it came to pass, when men began to multiply on the face of the earth, and daughters were born unto them, that the sons of God saw the daughters of men that they were fair, and they took them wives of all which they chose. And the Lord said, My spirit shall not always strive with man, for he also is flesh, yet his days shall be 120 years. Now, the first thing we have to get in our mind is, who was these sons of God, and who was these daughters of men? And a lot of teachers teach the sons of God as the offspring of fallen angels and humans. No, that's folks. That's something that was drug out of Greek mythology. It had nothing to do with truth. And they'll say things like, well, in some of the ancient writings, heathen kings was called sons of God, but this ain't ancient writings. This is inspired by God, and he never called heathen kings his sons. No. The sons of God in these days, folks, was exactly the same sons of God all the way through the Bible. Let's look and see what the Bible called sons of God. Luke 3:38, as it's running the genealogy of man, it said Adam was the son of God. God formed Adam and breathed into Adam his spirit, and Adam became a son of God. Romans 8:14, read that. Let's see who the sons was.
Romans 8:14.
I think that's what it is. Once you establish who the sons was and who the daughters was, everything will make more sense. Like I said, there's a guy here a few years ago that put out a book talking about the fallen angels was returning and was raising up children. But I hadn't saw. Have y'all seen any of that? Y'all seen any fallen angels marrying women lately? It's because the angels are spirits, folks. It takes blood to make a baby. I don't care who you are. It is absolutely impossible for angels don't procreate. If angels procreated, folks, heaven would have a population problem. And little fat baby angels would be on every cloud, wouldn't they? But 8:14 says it's this, Romans. For as many are as led by the Spirit of God, they are the sons of God. You see who the sons are, folks? Verse 20 says, for the creature was, is it 20? Yeah. Verse 19, for the earnest expectation of the creature waiteth for the manifestation of the sons of God. These sons of God, you and I are counted sons of God if we are following after the Spirit of Christ. You know, John said, as many as believed on Jesus, he gave them power to become sons of God. And this says, if you're following after the Spirit, you're sons of God. So, you know, we have to get that in our mind. Who was these sons of God? I see no reason to think that the sons of God in Genesis is any different than sons of God all the way through the Bible. It's those folks that was following after God, seeking after His way. And, now who was the daughters of men? Creation. It's the creation. And the creature waits for the manifestation or the cover to be taken off. See, it said the creature was made subject to vanity through man because man was, God put man in dominion, and when man failed, all of creation turned upside down too. It said it's waiting for the manifestation or the cover to be taken off the sons of God to put it back right. Well, look, she talked to a snake, didn't she? That wasn't the first time the snake had said something. See, the daughters of men, or the daughters of Adam, was marrying these sons of God. And these daughters were pagan ladies. And if you want to run this, you can run it all the way through the Bible. Always, God said, don't join yourself with the pagans. Let's read Deuteronomy 7. This is how it was in the days of Noah, folks. Verse 3 says this. Neither shall thou make marriages with them, talk about the pagans. Thy daughter shall not, thou shalt not give unto his sons, nor his daughters shall thou take unto thy son, for they will turn away thy son from following me, that they serve other gods, so will the anger of the Lord be kindled against you and destroy thee suddenly. Do you see that? Said don't get mixed up in it. And you know, in the New Testament it said not to join yourself together, you know, with the unbeliever. And I don't even know of one church that teaches that today. Do you? Don't be unequally yoked. That's right. And I don't know of one church that teaches that today, but that's always been a thing with God. Don't get mixed up with the world. Now, what that means is you don't marry pagans. Right. And two, see, the gene pool then was a perfect pool. It's not anymore. Yeah. It was a perfect gene pool then. And, as time spread out, that's where all the colors really came from. If this some kid was darker than, and the dark ones married, their kids was dark. And so, but it all started with a man and a woman, Adam and Eve. And like I said, he has a lot of doubts and questions. Well, everybody does at one time or another. But say there's a lot of questions there that the Bible doesn't just specifically point out. What we got is what we need for salvation, and to give us an idea of where we come from, where we're going. But there's some things there that at a time before Adam, see, he wasn't really a man, but if you look at those things too, see, what we have to realize this about Adam. We think of Adam as just real primitive, but Adam had the knowledge of God, folks. That's right. And they built cities, and it talks about things made of brass as you go through here. Sin made man stupid, and he went. in the first creation, where's the dinosaurs in with Adam? But see, they found all sorts of stuff. That's where science and what they call religion gets mixed up, because they get religious answers and not what the Bible said. But see, there was a creation before Adam. Sin brought the fall, and that creation was destroyed. Now they find dinosaur bones, they find the Neanderthal, they find the writings on the cave. Adam was not a caveman. And so a lot of the things, these things that they found are not descendants of man. That's the same way they find these monkey bones. Hey, this is man's early descendants. No, they're not. They was early monkeys. And things has changed. The monkey don't turn into nothing. The dog hadn't turned into nothing. But now we just got all kind of breeds of dogs, big ones, little ones, small ones, but they're all dogs. And that came from a special breeding down through the years, and the same way with humans and everything else. But Adam was a very intelligent man. He had the knowledge of God. As the more sin entered, the less man knew. And they have found, and sometimes if you get there's a book out years ago, and it was called "We're Not the First," and it had some things in that that was a little crazy, but it had some things in there where you could see too. They found skeletons that had the same incision in the skeletons as brain surgery does today, and they were thousands and thousands of years old. Somebody did brain surgery on them. But like I said, man, when sin entered, man started downward, and then as he learned things, he brought himself back up. But hey, Adam was a brilliant man. Before sin entered, Adam had the knowledge of God. Yeah, Adam named all the animals in one day. It takes me a week to name a dog. You know what I'm saying? I've been calling him Fido and Rover and everything else for the week's over. But no, that was the Israelis. That was descendants of Adam, all right. But they give the Egyptians the credit for that. The pyramids, no, the Jewish slaves built the pyramids. They had that knowledge that was passed down from their father, but they found all sorts of stuff that predates the 6,000 years of man. That is remarkable. And they found pieces of ancient computers in the first creation, God creation. No. If you read Genesis 1 there, it says, in the beginning God created the heaven and the earth. That's in the beginning. Okay. Next verse says, and the earth was void and without form. Yes. But the Hebrew word there is became. The Hebrew word that they translated was is the word became. It's the same word that they said God breathed into Adam the breath of life, and Adam became. It's translated became there. A living soul. But the word translated was, void without form, is became. It's a difference in something becoming something than was. God created in the beginning. That's the 6-day creation that we get in Genesis. Not after it fell. No, there was nothing there. Not after it fell. There was no. In our story of the recreation, it said, "Let there be light," and there was light. Well, it was 4 days before He created the sun and the moon. 4 days later. So that light was God's revelation on what He was doing. The whole creation began to recognize Him as God, and it dispelled the darkness that had came from the fall of Satan's fall. Satan brought sin into that first creation, and everything died. Yeah. God recreated again sinless and put Adam here. Adam was a man like we are, after God's image and after God's likeness. There hadn't been one before Adam like that. And we read, was it last week over in Jeremiah 4 when it's where He talked about, I beheld the earth and there was no man. Says there's been a man here ever since Adam. But Jeremiah was talking about a time when he looked, God speaking through him said he looked and saw no man, no Adam. So that was a time before Adam. It's talking about all the birds that fled and the cities was torn down. Jeremiah 4. Well, we can't build a pyramid. We still can't build a pyramid. Those things are so precisely cut, those rocks, and placed, we can't build them today. Yeah, where is that at? I saw that. And so, But I forgot where it said it was at. From the air, you couldn't see it from the ground, but from the air, you could see an airfield laid out. When Satan was here, it was a whole different thing. So he said of Satan, he said, you were altogether perfect until sin was found in you. See? And that's when the Christ came. He began to rebel against what God was trying to do, and this is what we wound up with. When he found out that God was putting Adam in dominion. The creation story we got in Genesis starts in Genesis 1 and 2. In the beginning, he created this. And what we get is a recreation. It talks about the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. So water was here when God started this creation. It had flooded this whole place. We don't have a whole. We don't. No, you can see through there that Satan was here, and you can see that he was ruling. He had cities. So he said, I will exalt my throne. So he was ruling here. I will exalt my throne above the heavens. I will become like God. In other words, he said, I'm supposed to be Adam. I'm supposed to be like God. Adam. It was. First verse. First verse is what you get that story. In the beginning, God created the heaven and earth. He did. And the earth was or became void and without form. And see, Isaiah tells us that he didn't make it void and without form. He made it to be inhabited. So all the scripture has to fit, see. Yeah, and see, Jesus said, I beheld Satan as lightning fall from heaven. In other words, he saw Satan kicked out of heaven. But in our story of Genesis, he was already evil because he was trying to destroy Adam and Eve here. So when did that happen? When did he get kicked out? He got kicked out when sin was found in him. That was before Adam was in the garden. Yeah, and most folks look, like I say, most teachers now teach these sons of God as fallen angels, the crossbreed between a fallen angel and human women. We fix to look at that too. Yeah, here we go. Can we look at that? All right. Now, before we get to 6 and 4, you have to see what narrative this is thrown in there. You know, if you're reading something, you got to see what narrative it's placed in. Now, we just read where the sons of God and the daughters of men, didn't we? Now, all of a sudden, it looks because of our translation, it looks like he just threw this in there. It said, and there were giants in the earth in those days, verse 4. And also after that, when the sons of God came into the daughters of men, they bare children to them. The same became mighty men which were of old, men of renown. Now, in the original text, folks, these words you see in italics was not in there. These words were added by the translators, but and it was added to help us understand. Italics, they weren't in the original. If it's in italics in your Bible, it means it wasn't in the original text. Those words were added by the translators to help us understand, and sometimes it does, and sometimes it confuses us. But now, there were giants, and let me just ask you again, looking at the context of everything. We just talked about men and women and sons of God and marrying the daughters of men, and all of a sudden, right out of the blue, there were giants in the earth in those days. You tell me what giants it's got to do with sons of God marrying daughters of men. Does that sound like it's a little out of place to you? There were giants in the earth in those days? Well, that word, again, if you want to go back and look, that word is a word called, and the original Hebrew had no vowels. So that word, and a lot of the new Bibles I understand, doesn't even translate that word to giants, it just leaves it like it was, Nephilim. But that word is Nephal, Nephal. But you take out the vowels like it was when the translators got it, and you got Nphal to work with. Now, they added little marks into Hebrew so that you could say it. But now, that word, they were giants. It can mean bully. It can mean giants. But again, you got to look at the context that it's in. And let's just look at this. There were giants in the earth in those days, and also after that, when the sons of God came, see, it's back on men and women and having children. It's just a context of it. They were giants in the earth in those days, and also after that, when the sons of God came into the daughters of men, they bare children to them. The same became the mighty men of old, which were men of renown. You tell me how fallen angel and a human woman could produce a man of honor. That's what that word renown means. How could a demonic spirit produce a man of honor? But if you look at this, see that they bear children, the same. Or if you leave out the italics word right there, and you'll get what it originally said. It said they bear to them the same mighty men which were of old, men of renown. What we see happening here is the sons of God got tangled up in a sexual revolution. They began to marry the pagan women. It's not talking about the children, the offspring became men of renown. It's talking about the men which were of old. You see that? Of old, they were men of honor, men of integrity. They got caught up in a sexual revolution, and it brought a part of it was what brought the flood. Next verse said, God saw that the wickedness of man was great, and every imagination of his heart was only evil continually. Well, if you wanna look at some things right here, look over at Job 3:16 and see what this word's translated at there. This word is translated giants here. Look at Job. Somebody read me Job 3:16.
3:16?
Job, Not John, Job.
Whereas in hidden untimely birth I had not been infants which never saw light.
Untimely birth, it's the same word as giants. Nephal. It's translated there as an untimely birth. Also, if you look at Psalms 58 and 8, it's translated untimely birth there. Ecclesiastes 6 and 3. All of those. None of them is.
What that other was saying, that in that time
they were killing their babies.
They were untimely births, they were aborted.
They were killing their babies, and it said when the sons of God went into them, they bare their children, which meant they weren't bearing their children before that. Right. And when you look at that and see what it was, what you're looking at, and again, you either have to say, putting everything in context, what you talk about, and they talk about men and women marrying and having kids. That the word giant, translated giants right there, that's just thrown in there. That's got absolutely nothing to do with nothing. If you want to look at that as giants, but if you look at that as what it is, they were killing their babies. Nowhere in the Bible are you going to find where we're talking about the fallen angels. Are you going to find where God told women not to marry angels? You know why? He didn't have to, because angels can't reproduce. Angels is on a different plane. But the sons of God, they were in human form, but they weren't human. They could walk right through a wall. They could step into the fire and go up in the smoke. Well, see, like again, they got that. That came down from Greek mythology, and our people added it to the gospel, because hey, that was a well-known thing. Angels and gods mixing with the men. Even animals, the Greek mythology had animals mixing with men and producing God-like people. That's how they got Hercules and, the little half goat and half man and all this good stuff. But it's all mythology, folks. What you got here is a story of a sexual revolution when men of honor, the sons of God, got caught up in this thing and left God's way and went their own way. But they were killing their babies. Now, again, the things that God hates in Proverbs 6. Somebody read that. Somebody get me Proverbs 6 and 16.
Among the brethren.
Do you see that? Things that God hates, those that shed innocent blood. Well, would you say whatever brought the flood was some things that God hated? And again, that same thing runs through the Bible, that God does not want his children marrying into the pagans, number one, and innocent blood being shed is a thing that God hates. And that's what I'm saying, folks, right now. See, in the days of Noah, these things was going on, But it took 100 years for the judgment to get full. And folks,
We ain't far from that 100 years now.
don't let nobody kid you. Judgment's coming, and it's going to come rough. I pray for those that stands in the path of judgment, because judgments will fall. It'll fall. It has to. It's a law. It's a law. But you see, well, let's just read that like it would have been. There were abortions in the earth in those days, and also after that, when the sons of God came into the daughters of men, they bare children to them. Do you see that? The same mighty men which were of old, men of renown. Genesis 4. All of it will come together. The whole chapter will come together when you read it like that. They did. They did. If you well, that's the same way, folks, all the way through. And folks, the translators, and I still think King James is probably the best version we got, but the translators were hired. The original writings were inspired. King James paid the translators to translate this thing. And like I said, there's so many words in the Hebrews. The Hebrew language, and I wish I knew it all, but the Hebrew language is such a wide application. Like the word ish, it can mean anything from God himself, benevolent husband, to the devil. It's that one word. You have to look and see where it's at in context before you know what he's talking about. So what we had in the days of Noah, what brought the flood, and again, it's going to bring the great tribulation, is things God hates. And it was the shedding of innocent blood. It was the children of God bringing the world into them instead of trying to convince the world. They let the world convince them. They got caught up in the world things. And again, if you believe that we are in the last days, you either have to say the world should be full of abortions or it should be full of half angels and half men. What are you seeing? You saw a giant lately? I mean, you see big people, but they're not giants like these giants. We'll talk about that. But it says after that. So you have to ask the question, there were giants in the earth in those days, and also after that. Well, after that, after the giants, what happened to the giants? No, but when you put the abortion there, after they were killing their babies, the sons of God began to take these women, these pagan women, and they had their babies because they saw God bless the sons of God. And so they kept their children looking for the blessing. But it brought the flood because they killed the innocent blood. They shed the innocent blood, folks. Let's look at this. And God saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that's right after they were killing their babies. And that every imagination of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. And it repented the Lord. That's the hardest part of God, that he had made man. And it grieved him at his heart. Now, look down at verse 12. We won't read all this. Look at verse 12. Go back and read it all if you want when you can. And God looked upon the earth, verse 12, and behold, it was corrupt. For all flesh had corrupted his way upon the earth. And that word means dying. It was dying because all flesh had changed his way upon the earth. Are we, as it was in the days of Noah, again, God made man, God made women, and he brought the woman to the man as his wife. What do we got today? You can marry the dog in some places, It's changing God's order. And that's what they were doing then. All flesh had corrupted God's order. And folks, it brings judgment every time, and it's going to bring judgment this time too. And again, anybody got anything you want to add to all this? I'm just doing all the talking. Does that make sense to you? Does that make sense to you when you read it? With the word?
Don't make sense.
Huh?
Some of it don't.
What don't?
I'm talking about.
Well, see, we have to say Jesus said it would be in the end times, when he came, it would be as it was in the days of Noah. When you understand how it was in the days of Noah, see if it's that way now.
Yes.
And if it's that way now, hey, Christ was absolutely right? It is. And you know why the judgment ain't already fell? It's because we have got a time sets here for us to get this thing ready, and we're not ready. It's just like when Jesus came.
And the Christian's prayers is
Holding back the harvest. It's just like when Jesus came and wept over Jerusalem. He said, how often I would have gathered you, and you wouldn't. How often he would have already came back, but the church wasn't ready because we had all figured this thing out in our denominational boxes. That's as far as we looked. Like I said, the guy a few years ago put a book out, and he had a worldwide ministry that he was looking for the return of the fallen angels, that they was coming into the earth and fixing to repopulate the earth again with half and half. And you know what? They never found a half and half fossil anywhere. They won't never find one because it's impossible to be so. And again, he said it would be as it was in the days of Sodom and Gomorrah. 2 times he said the end time would be like Noah and Sodom and Gomorrah. And I think everybody understands that in Sodom and Gomorrah, immorality was the chief thing going, but that wasn't the only thing. Look at Ezekiel, the 16th chapter. Sometimes we try to squeeze the Bible into a local happening when it's a worldwide event. You know what I'm saying? You know, I didn't say it a while ago, but there's something else we need to keep your eye on. Is Iran is threatening to attack Israel and wipe her off the map. So Israel's preparing for war right there. Yeah. So you need to keep your eye on there because, hey, the church comes back to save the remnant of Israel. All of these things are coming together, folks. It's just like a giant jigsaw puzzle, and the pieces are all falling in place. Now, in the end time, see, he'll establish her, and she'll always be there. Yeah. But what we got going on right now is most of Israel is as secular as America is. Yeah. The only reason that God is blessing Israel is because of what he said, not because of what they're doing right now. But see, the promises to her is his promises, regardless of what she does. It's still his promises. And hey, he said, he that touches her touches the apple of his eye. You can't keep poking God in the eye and expect him not to retaliate. And folks, he has over time after time after time. See, that 6-day war, when the Arabs attacked, even American military people said that Israel couldn't last, and in a few days the Arabs would overrun them because the Arabs had the best equipment. They had millions of more men. But in 6 days, Israel defeated all the gathered Arab armies and took whatever they wanted to take in 6 days. And there's a bunch of stories about those times that if you look at them, you can see, hey, it had to be God. Yeah, that was a Palestinian guy that said that. But they gave a story too where that Israel's army was trying to get advanced to attack the Arab armies that was coming, and they had put minefields out. They'd put mines out there in the desert, and they were having just inch at a time. They was crawling along. They said with their bayonets, just punching the head of them, trying to, without putting pressure on these mines. But they had to get their tanks through there to be able to meet these coming armies. But the story of the general was writing said that all of a sudden a wind picked up. Said just a terrible sandstorm, and they all just had to hunker down for a few minutes. But said when the sandstorm was over, and they all stood up, it said it was a full moon came out, and they could see every landmine uncovered. And so they went out there and defused them and drove their tanks through and beat the coming army. But God, see. But Ezekiel 16, like I say, we all know about Sodom and Gomorrah. It was a city filled with homosexuality, but that wasn't everything that was going on there. Look at verse 49. Starting at verse 49. Behold, this was the iniquity. I got to hurry. We're about out of time. Of thy sister Sodom, pride. Not only had they turned against God's order, but they were proud of it. You ever heard anything about pride? You ever heard of gay pride? Pride, fullness of bread. In other words, they had everything that they wanted, and the abundance of idleness. And in her daughters, neither did she strengthen the hand of the poor and needy. In other words, they got tied up in themselves. They were wealthy, and history will tell you that they were trade centers. Sodom and Gomorrah was trade centers, very wealthy, but they didn't have to work a whole lot anymore. They got rich. They decided we don't need God. We can do it our way. They become prideful in the way that they, in the rebellion against God. You remember when the angels, if you read that story with Lot, the angels came. The homosexuals of that town tried to break Lot's door down to get the angels. Remember that? If you don't, go back and read that story sometime. But they was rich. They had plenty of idle time, and they got to the place where they didn't think they needed God. Folks, all of this is a picture of America and the world today. Yeah. America is one of the wealthiest nations in the world. We've had it easier than most nations. And you know what? We appreciate it less. We forgot God. The churches is emptied out. And, hey, people pay thousands and thousands of dollars to watch a ball game in the cold. And I ain't got nothing against the ball game. But I'm saying we've got our priorities turned. We got plenty of idle time. We're rich. We're proud of who we are. And so we pushed God out and took our own way in. It's exactly, folks, the way it was in the days of Sodom and Gomorrah. It's exactly the way it was in the days of Noah. Exactly. You can go line by line, and Jesus said, this is the way it's going to be, and this is the way it is. So, well, let me tell you something. Now, and don't get me wrong when I say this. Some of the largest churches in America right now is also some of the most liberal.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Because, I see signs says, we're a non-judgmental church. And I'm not for judging folks, but what mostly that means, non-judgmental, is you can just be, whatever you want to do is fine. Everything goes. We're not going to talk to you about any kind of sin. Everything goes. But yeah, it'll be the same way again, and it is the same way again. Folks, there's a king coming to set this thing right. And the reason the flood happened, you know why the flood happened when it did? I mean, we know the judgment built up and it fell, but the earth was dying. God did away with those that was destroying the earth, but to save creation, not to destroy the creation. That boat would have helped a lot more people, but they wouldn't get on. But God was trying to save the seed of man, not destroy everything. But judgment fell, and judgment will fall this time. And let me tell you something, folks. You can just take this, you can write this down, and again, this is not a soothing, pretty message. But America is collapsing. She is collapsing. She is going to collapse in on herself. Trump can't save us, and this nation is not going back to where she once was. She's, as Merle Haggard says, she's headed downhill like a snowball headed for hell. So don't get your hopes in America's going back. Get your hopes in there's a king coming back.